There are a lot of pervasive myths about mead making, and today we're going to cover the top 6. Maybe for the holidays you just got your first mead making kit, or maybe you've been making mead for a little while and you're a little uncertain about the whole thing. Maybe you think you've already messed something up, but odds are you probably didn't. While mead making seems super difficult, I promise you, it's not. There are some difficult things to master, but the process in and of itself, super easy. Myth number 1, mead takes years to be drinkable. This myth comes from a time before modern mead-making nutrition. Yeast needs nitrogen, and honey doesn't have a lot of nitrogen. So those mead-making recipes from back in the day, they did take a long time to age because a stressed-out yeast produces off flavors, and off flavors take time to break down and mellow out. It also comes a little bit from the culture of wine aging. A lot of folks feel like you need to put a wine back and let it age for several years to really reach perfection. Mead can benefit from some aging, but with proper practices, it's not really necessary. A typical beginner mead batch is going to take about 30 days to complete, and then maybe another 20 to 30 days before you're ready to put it in bottles, sometimes sooner. And then that mead will need some age in the bottle, usually 3 to 6 months, but it can age often up to a year and a half before it reaches its peak. Aging generally helps break down harshness and mellow big flavors into something that's a little bit more cohesive. So if you're finding that your mead is a little bit on the spicy side, maybe put it back for a few months and see if it improves. Time improves a lot of things about your homebrew, so prepare to be patient, but don't necessarily think that you need to put it back for 3 to 5 years in order to experience its true potential. My rule for mead is it's not ready to bottle until I think it's ready to drink. That's why I prefer bulk aging in a carboy. Myth number 2, mead is super sweet. And this one makes sense. Honey is sweet. Mead is made from honey. So why wouldn't mead be sweet? And then a lot of those common meads you find out there at Renaissance fairs, or the 1 or 2 bottles of mainstream mead you're going to find at the liquor store, those are also pretty sweet. And so that kind of sets the understanding that mead should be sweet, but it doesn't have to be. And a fully fermented mead is not going to be sweet. It's going to be dry, and dry kind of tends to feel a little bit sour or a little bit gritty on your palate, and some back sweetening can help. But a dry mead is not necessarily a mistake. And even just a little bit of back sweetening after stabilizing your mead can bring a lot of those big, nice honey flavors back just by reinforcing them with some sweetness. If you've bottled your mead and you're finding that it does drink a little too dry, make some simple syrup or some honey syrup, or grab some fruit syrup and you can sweeten it in the glass when you pour it. But personally, I'm a big fan of dry mead, as long as the honey flavor is there and it's not too acidic to be enjoyable. Myth number 3, cloudy mead means something went wrong. Mead is going to start out cloudy. Honey has a lot of solids in it, and eventually those solids will all settle to the bottom. But if you've put fruit in it or you've put grain in it, you might have pectins or proteins that are causing a persistent haze. Additionally, yeast in suspension causes a haze. And that's why a lot of times we encourage you just leave it in primary until it's mostly clear before you worry about transferring it off, stabilizing it, and sweetening it. The clearer your mead is at every step of the way, the likelier it is to be clear once it gets into the bottles. When we see a hazy mead in the bottle, we think, ugh, that must be a homebrew, because we drink with our eyes first. And when we see something cloudy, we don't expect that, because when you go to a bottle shop, wines, meads, liquors are all crystal clear, and that is our expectation. To help clearing, you can use fining agents like bentonite, which is a natural clay, sparkloid, dual fine, or gelatin. There's plenty of different options out there to help you get your mead clear. Haziness in a mead does not necessarily always affect flavor very much, but it does affect our perception of how that mead is going to taste. Myth number 4, if it ain't bubbling, fermentation failed. If you've properly secured your airlock, you should see bubbles coming out of the airlock, and you should see bubbles in the carboy. If you're fermenting in a bucket, you also want to check to make sure that that bucket lid is properly sealed with a good gasket. Generally, the likeliest reason you're not seeing any bubbles is because fermentation has finished. But if you never saw any bubbles, you could have pitched a packet of dead yeast. It happens. It's rare, but it happens, and you might need to repitch new yeast. But the typical reasons you're not seeing any bubbles in your airlock are that the mead has finished, the pressure inside of the carboy has stabilized, or you've got a leak somewhere in your airlock or in your bucket lid. But every now and then, it could be because your yeast is just fermenting slow, which often happens when the temperature drops. Like right now, it's December, and everything is cold in my house, which means very slow fermentations. The best way to know if your mead has finished fermenting is to use a hydrometer to check the gravity. If the gravity has fallen to about 1.00 or lower and stays at that point, then fermentation is, in fact, finished. Don't fret over bubbles in your airlock. Use a hydrometer. Myth number 5, mead is harder to make than wine or beer. This is just not the case. Mead is about as easy to make as wine. You're just mixing some sugar, your honey, with some liquid, your water, adding yeast, and letting it ferment. It's actually less difficult to make than beer. With beer, you're worrying about mash temperatures, timing on your hops additions, cooling your wort to yeast pitching temperature, and making sure your beer is carbonated on the other end of things. With a traditional still mead, you don't have to worry about any of that. You just mix it up and let it ride, as long as you're using good nutrition. Now, that's not to say that mead making can't be finicky, because you do need to use good nutrition. You need to make sure your yeast have plenty of nitrogen so they don't get stressed out. You need to watch your temperatures to make sure you're operating within your yeast's temperature range so it doesn't get too hot and create off flavors that, again, need time to age and mellow. But if you can follow a recipe, follow directions, you're going to be good to go. Myth number 6, you need expensive and advanced equipment in order to make good mead. There's this thing in homebrewing that we call gear creep, and it's basically always chasing the next big item. Maybe it's a conical fermenter or a kegging system with a keezer, or maybe you want to upgrade to a big 3-tier brewing system. Well, I'm here to tell you that mead is relatively simple, and that's why mead kits generally are relatively simple. You need a fermentation vessel, you need a stopper and an airlock, you need honey, you need clean water, you need a brewing yeast, like a wine yeast or a beer yeast, and you need to make sure everything is sanitized. Beyond that, all you're doing is choosing a good honey and just the right yeast for the job and letting it ferment. I like to say that beer is like making a soup or a stew. You have a lot of ingredients, you have to time when each of them goes in, and you have to pull it off right when it's ready. With mead, it's more like making soup from concentrate. You take that can of soup, you pop it open, you pour it in, that's your honey, you add some water, and then, in this case, you add yeast, but you let it ferment. Beer, lots of ingredients, lots of timing, lots to think about. Mead, you mix it up, you set it, and forget it. Here at CraftaBrew, we have some really simple mead kits that have everything you need, and some of our mead kits even come with the honey, which is a nice added bonus. You know you're getting good honey in that kit. And we have mead nutrients that we include in those kits, as well as sell a la carte, so that way you have proper nutrition and don't get stressed out yeast. Did I miss any big mead myths in this video? If so, drop a comment below and let us know. And of course, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up to like this video, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss any of the upcoming content here at CraftaBrew. With the holidays approaching, we have a lot of new brewers about to enter the hobby, and we like to pride ourselves on being one of the best places on YouTube in order to find great, educational, and easy to digest homebrewing content. I'm BC here for CraftaBrew, and until next time, I hope you've got good things brewing.